Hello, welcome back for our final installment of our acid-base balance mini lessons. So this summary, it's kind of putting all the pieces together. We're going to take a look at respiratory acidosis and alkalosis and metabolic acidosis and alkalosis and how our body's going to respond to those. Just a few comments before we get started though, taking a look at some of the notes. And with your article assignment, I might be posting another little helpful video to go through ABGs of how you determine whether somebody is in compensated state or uncompensated state, how to figure out whether it's metabolic or respiratory acidosis or alkalosis. So I'm going to post something else specific to the article assignment, but this is kind of what it's going to be talking about. So when we talk about an acute imbalance, it's happening immediately. And the problem can usually be fixed, hopefully right away. In a compensated state, this is a long-term problem. The patient their body has changed and adapted their physiological responses to maintain normalcy, even in the presence of that continued imbalance. So acute is a quick, maybe like hyperventilation or vomiting or severe diarrhea. Those would be an acute phase, where somebody with COPD or emphysema, that would be a chronic compensated state to maintain their pH, even though they might have an imbalance of CO2. Their kidneys are working overdrive to kind of keep that in a normal pH. So of these imbalances, the most common is respiratory acidosis. That's because of the COPD and the high levels of CO2 that can be held onto in the body. So that your most common type of metabolic pH imbalance is going to be respiratory acidosis. Okay, and then the second most common is metabolic acidosis. So because we generate acids normally in our metabolic processes, those two, respiratory and metabolic acidosi, I don't know, plural. Those two imbalances are going to be the most common, and then your alkaloses are going to be a little bit less common. But again, like I said, whether you're alkalosis or acidosis, they're both not good for your system. So let's take a look at some of these imbalances and what our body can do. So this is your respiratory problem. So the top part, we're going to talk about that first. This is respiratory acidosis. So respiratory acidosis is caused by too much CO2 is being retained by your body. Now they're showing hypoventilation as the cause, hypoventilation causing an increased PCO2. So there could be other reasons though, right? So like pulmonary fibrosis, like in our case study, or emphysema, where the lack of surface exchange area is there. It's been destroyed due to the disease. So it's not, they could be breathing at a normal rate, but they're still holding on to CO2 because they've lost that surface area for gas exchange. So this slide is just showing hypoventilation, but for whatever respiratory reason, you're holding on to CO2. That's the problem. The problem is it's driving that equation to the right, producing hydrogen ions, decreasing the blood pH. So what can your body do with that? Well, it's first going to try to fix the problem with the respiratory system. But if your respiratory system is kind of part of the problem, we can't really rely on that to help us fix the problem. So if you have pulmonary fibrosis or a COPD like emphysema, you can increase your respiratory rate to try to blow off that CO2, but you might not be able to do it solely with just the respiratory compensation. So then what you're going to need to do is bring in that renal compensation. We saw that in the last little video, where the kidneys will then kick in and start excreting higher levels of hydrogen ion and generating and reabsorbing higher levels of bicarb. That's going to help buffer those hydrogen ions that are produced from the high concentration of carbon dioxide. So combined effects, if we can get those CO2s blown off, and an increase in our bicarb production, then hopefully we'll be able to maintain our blood pH back to normal. So whether this is an acute or a compensated state, this is our goal, to try to reach that 7.35 to 7.45. All right, so that's what your respiratory system would do in the case of respiratory acidosis. Your lungs are the problem. In respiratory alkalosis, it's the other way. So in this case, hyperventilation is the most common cause of respiratory alkalosis. It's hyperventilation. You're breathing too fast. Or you could be, if you're set on a ventilator, somebody set your tidal volume too high or your respiratory rate too high, somebody's in ICU. It could have been a medical error that sets that rate too high and you're breathing off too much CO2. You're reducing your CO2 levels. And so what our respiratory system is going to want to try to do is to slow the respiratory rate. So decrease the respiratory rate, hold on to some of that CO2, which will drive the equation to the right, replacing some hydrogen ions that are getting lost. If that cannot fix the problem enough, then your renal compensation will kick in. Because we're in alkalosis, it will hold on to hydrogen ions and it will kick out bicarbonate ions because we don't want those to be tying up hydrogen ions. And the goal is to increase PCO2, which will bring our blood pH back to normal. And in both of these, I didn't mention, but those buffer systems are going to be working behind the scenes, but they're limited. They can only do so much. So if we are in an acute situation, they might help tremendously. But if it's a chronic situation, they're probably all used up and we're going to have to rely on our kidneys for the most part to deal with a long-term chronic situation. All right, so that is how our body compensates and responds to respiratory pH imbalances, an acidosis or an alkalosis. For the metabolic problem, so this is metabolic acidosis, and there's two sources of metabolic acidosis. So the first one we're going to talk about is metabolic acidosis due to a high hydrogen ion concentration. So for whatever reason, our body's response to metabolism or something that's happening not with the lungs, so anything that is not respiratory caused falls into the category of metabolic cause. So high hydrogen ions for some reason is going to cause a metabolic acidosis, so increased hydrogen ions. Your chemoreceptors pick up on that. Your respiratory center is going to increase the respiratory rate. You're going to kick out hydrogen, reabsorb bicarb, and that together should bring you back into homeostasis. Okay, so decreasing hydrogen, increasing bicarb, and decreasing the CO2 helps to decrease that hydrogen. If, however, you can be in an acidosis with not just high hydrogen ions, but if you have a lack of bicarb, you don't have enough of that buffer reserve to tie up the normally produced hydrogen ions. So you could be in an acidosis because you have a decreased bicarb. The most common source of a decreased bicarbonate ion is diarrhea. You are losing your buffer because you're pooping it out so fast. You cannot reabsorb that bicarb that would normally be absorbed along that large intestine epithelium. Think back to the digestive system. So if you are losing too much bicarb, you are losing your reserve and you can't maintain your pH balance because you don't have that buffer to tie up hydrogen ions. So that's kind of the most common cause for metabolic acidosis is loss of buffer via diarrhea. So in that case, we're going to do our compensation the same. We're going to increase our respiratory rate. We're going to hold on to or get rid of hydrogen ions. We're going to hold on to bicarb. Our buffer systems are going to do what they can. And the goal, the combined effects are going to be the same. The cause was just different. So you can be in metabolic acidosis by either too much hydrogen ions coming in, so maybe like lactic acidosis or ketoacidosis, those organic acid buildup, or you can be in metabolic acidosis because you've lost too much of your bicarb. All right, so then our last scenario is alkalosis, metabolic alkalosis, not as common, probably the least common of all of these imbalances. So metabolic alkalosis is, again, combined effects of either decreased hydrogen ions or you have too much bicarb. Now, an example of what could cause metabolic alkalosis would be the opposite of diarrhea. I guess it would be the opposite, vomiting. So if you have persistent continual vomiting, you have to now go back and think to our parietal cells and our digestive system. And when we vomit, we are losing the contents of our stomach. And to maintain homeostasis in our stomach, our parietal cells are saying, hey, we just lost all of our hydrochloric acid. I need to make more. So if you remember, our little parietal cells, they make hydrogen go this way and they make bicarb go into the blood. You guys remember the alkaline tide? So extreme alkaline tide from continual vomiting, you're losing your hydrogen ions into the toilet or garbage can or bowl or whatever you're vomiting into, and the bicarb gets dumped into your blood. So we're increasing bicarb, which results in our increasing of our pH. So the compensation for metabolic alkalosis is we need to slow down our respiratory rate. So we're holding on to our CO2 because we want to drive the equation to make more hydrogen ions because we don't have enough, because we're vomiting them out because of our gastric acid production and this increased alkaline tide. We are going to generate and hold on to hydrogen while we pee out bicarb, and those things are going to try to get us back to normal. So work through these. I know it's a lot. I think the article assignment is really helpful. It's one of my favorites as far as application to real world scenarios. Over the years, I've had quite a few students who've gone on into their programs, nursing programs, saying, do you have a copy of that ABG article assignment? I'm in my nursing program and we're learning about blood draws and arterial blood gases. And that was a really good assignment. So yeah, so that's what you're going to be your case study this week. Ask questions. Like I said, I'm going to post another video specific about the article assignment, probably close to that link for the article assignment, to kind of show you how to work through the ABGs. But it's kind of referring to all of this stuff here with how your body responds to respiratory and metabolic acidosis and alkalosis, and whether you're in acute or a compensated state. All right, so that wraps up our chapter 27 stuff. Have a great day. I will see you next time. Bye.